The local diner, with its checkered floors and neon signs, had always been my refuge, a place where the outside world's troubles seemed to fade away. I loved sitting at my usual booth, savoring the familiar aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon. My prosthetic leg was a part of me, worn but resilient, and I had long grown accustomed to the stares it drew. Today, the diner was bustling with its usual lunch crowd. The sound of clinking dishes and low conversations created a comforting backdrop. I was halfway through my meal, my coffee steaming softly, when the diner's door swung open with a clatter. 3 bikers stormed in, their presence immediately commanding attention. Leather jackets adorned with patches, bandanas, and tattoos were their uniform, a stark contrast to the diner's warm and cozy atmosphere. Their rough demeanor seemed to crush the comfort of the space, like a storm cloud over a sunny day. One of the bikers, a hulking man with a beard like wild brambles, glanced around before his eyes landed on me. A smirk curled at the corner of his mouth. He nudged his friend, a wiry man with a sleeve of tattoos, and pointed in my direction. "Hey, look at that," the biker with the beard said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Nice leg you've got there, old man. Is that a war trophy or just a new accessory?" I tried to ignore them, focusing on my meal. But the bikers were relentless. They swaggered over to my booth, their laughter booming and harsh. The diner's other patrons looked on in a mix of shock and discomfort, but no one moved to intervene. The wiry biker leaned in close, his breath foul and hot. "What's it like, being a war hero with a fancy prosthetic? Does it make you feel special or just remind you of what you lost?" I looked up at them, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've seen enough of the world to know that not everyone is decent. I'd appreciate it if you'd leave me alone." The biker with the beard chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, come on, old man. We're just having a bit of fun. You're not going to do anything about it, are you?" I started to stand, feeling a surge of anger and indignation. But before I could say anything more, the waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, came over. She placed her hand on my shoulder, her face pale with concern. "Gentlemen, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," she said firmly, her voice quivering slightly. The biker's amusement turned to irritation. "Who do you think you are, telling us what to do?" The wiry one spat. The bearded biker laughed. "You really want to make us leave? What's the old man going to do? Call the cops?" I shook my head, feeling helpless. There's no need for violence. The bikers seemed to take pleasure in the discomfort they were causing, their laughter echoing in the diner. One of them, a grizzled man with a cruel smile, leaned closer. "You know, old man, you might have fought for freedom, but here and now, we're the ones making the rules." The waitress's hands trembled as she reached for the phone. "I'm calling the police," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As the bikers continued their taunts, I felt a mixture of anger and resignation. The diner's once warm and inviting atmosphere had been tainted by their presence. My meal was ruined, but more than that, the dignity I'd fought to preserve was under attack. The bikers' laughter and jeers were a harsh reminder that some battles are fought not just on distant fields, but right in the places we consider safe and sacred. And so, amidst the noise and the chaos, I waited, hoping that help would come soon, and that justice would prevail, even in this small corner of the world. The diner's atmosphere had turned tense, a stark contrast to its usual warmth. As the bikers continued their taunting, a group of elementary school children, gathered in a corner booth, noticed the disturbance. They were a lively bunch, buzzing with energy and curiosity, having just finished their lunch. The older kids, led by a brave girl named Emily, saw what was happening and exchanged worried glances. Emily, a petted girl with a mop of curly hair and a determined gaze, tugged at the sleeve of her friend, Jake. "We've got to do something," she whispered urgently. "That man shouldn't have to deal with this alone." Jake, a tall boy with glasses and a serious expression, nodded in agreement. "But what can we do? They look really scary. Emily's eyes narrowed with resolve. We can't just sit here. We have to stand up for him. The children huddled together, their faces set with a mixture of fear and determination. They glanced around, gauging the biker's attention. As one of the bikers was about to make another rude comment, Emily stood up, her small stature almost lost in the commotion, but her voice clear and strong. "Hey, leave him alone." Emily's shout cut through the din like a knife. The diner's patrons looked on in astonishment as the kids, led by Emily, began to move toward the booth. The bearded biker turned his attention to the children, his eyebrows raising in mock surprise. "Oh look, kids are getting involved now. What's this? A schoolyard intervention?" Emily stepped forward bravely. "You're being mean and disrespectful. You should leave him alone right now." The bikers exchanged amused glances. The wiry one smirked. "And what are you going to do if we don't? Go crying to your teachers?" Jake, his hands balled into fists, spoke up. "We're not afraid of you. You shouldn't be treating anyone like this, especially someone who's been through so much." The bikers' amusement began to fade as the children formed a protective circle around Samuel's booth. The diner's patrons, seeing the children's bravery, began to murmur their support. The children's action had shifted the focus from Samuel to them, a beacon of innocence and courage against the bikers' aggression. One of the younger boys, Timmy, holding a half-eaten cookie, added with trembling determination, "My grandpa's a war hero too. He says people like you should be ashamed of yourselves." The bikers, momentarily taken aback by the children's defiance, exchanged uneasy glances. The bearded biker's face twisted in frustration. All right. We get it. We're leaving." The wiry biker grumbled. "This isn't over. You kids better watch your backs." As the bikers stomped out, the diner erupted in a chorus of relieved sighs and appreciative applause. The children, still huddled together, looked up at Samuel, their faces flushed with a mix of pride and nervousness. Samuel, though shaken, managed a warm smile. "Thank you, kids. You did the right thing." Emily beamed, her cheeks pink with embarrassment and pride. "We just couldn't stand by and do nothing. It was the least we could do." The diner's patrons and staff gathered around, offering their praise and support. The waitress, Maria, her earlier fear replaced with gratitude, wiped her hands on a towel and approached Samuel. "I'm so sorry about what happened. You're a hero in our eyes, and we're grateful for the kids' bravery." Samuel nodded, his eyes moist with emotion. "I'm just glad they stood up for what's right. Sometimes it takes the smallest among us to show the greatest courage." As the bikers' motorcycles roared into the distance, the diner's atmosphere began to return to normal. But the events of the day had left an indelible mark on everyone present. The bravery of a group of elementary school children had turned the tide, transforming a moment of cruelty into a powerful demonstration of solidarity and respect. The once lively atmosphere of the diner had now simmered with a palpable tension. The children, still clustered around Samuel's booth, were now comforted by the reassuring presence of the other patrons who gathered to show their support. The waitress, Maria, her face pale from the earlier commotion, had dialed 911 as soon as the bikers stormed out. Outside, the rhythmic hum of police sirens grew louder, piercing through the diner's usual sounds. The door swung open, and Officer Jim Reynolds, a sturdy figure with a calm demeanor, entered. He took in the scene with a practiced eye, his gaze softening as he noticed the children and Samuel. "All right, folks, what's the situation?" Officer Reynolds asked, his voice steady and authoritative. Maria, still trembling slightly, stepped forward. "Officer, those men were harassing Mr. Samuel here. They made a scene, taunted him about his prosthetic leg, and..." Before Maria could finish, the door creaked open again, and Mayor Thompson strode in, his presence commanding immediate attention. The mayor was a tall man in his mid-50s, known for his no-nonsense approach and firm but fair demeanor. He'd heard about the incident from the police radio and had decided to take a personal interest. "I'm Mayor Thompson," he announced, surveying the room with a stern expression. I want to hear exactly what happened here. Emily, still standing near Samuel, approached the mayor with a mix of nervousness and bravery. Sir, those bikers were really mean to Mr. Samuel. They made fun of his leg and ruined his meal. We tried to stand up to them, but they were threatening. Mayor Thompson's eyes softened as he looked at the children. I'm proud of you for standing up to those bullies. It takes real courage to do what you did. Officer Reynolds began taking statements from the diners and staff, asking for details about the bikers and their behavior. As he interviewed Maria, the mayor moved over to Samuel, his expression sympathetic. Mr. Samuel, Mayor Thompson said, I'm deeply sorry you had to endure that. We take matters like this very seriously. Those bikers will be held accountable for their actions. Samuel, though visibly shaken, nodded. I appreciate that, Mayor. It was just hard to see them disrespect me and the kids. I'm grateful for everyone's support. The mayor placed a reassuring hand on Samuel's shoulder. You've shown great strength today. We're here to ensure this doesn't go unpunished. Officer Reynolds completed his interviews and headed for the door, his expression resolute. We'll track them down and make sure they face the consequences for their behavior. As Officer Reynolds and Mayor Thompson prepared to leave, the door swung open again, this time revealing the bikers who had returned, looking defiant. The mayor's expression hardened as he spotted them. Those are the individuals responsible, Mayor Thompson said, pointing to the bikers. Officer, let's address this matter immediately. The bikers, taken aback by the swift response, attempted to protest, but Officer Reynolds and his colleague moved in quickly, guiding them toward the door with firm, authoritative steps. One of the bikers, the bearded one, tried to argue. We didn't do anything wrong. We were just having some fun. Mayor Thompson's gaze was unwavering. Harassing an elderly veteran and threatening children is not fun. You'll have your day in court. As the bikers were escorted out, the diner's patrons began to cheer, their support for Samuel and the children evident. Emily, Jake, and the other kids were surrounded by the grateful customers, their bravery and solidarity celebrated. Maria, wiping her eyes, approached Samuel with a heartfelt smile. Thank you for your patience and for being such an inspiration. Samuel nodded, his pride and relief evident. It's the kids who deserve the real thanks. They're the true heroes today. As the diner's atmosphere slowly returned to its usual comfort, the day's events had left an indelible mark on everyone present. The arrival of the police and mayor had turned a chaotic situation into a moment of community triumph, reinforcing the power of standing up for what's right and the importance of collective support. The diner's air was still charged with tension after the bikers had been taken away. Most patrons had returned to their meals or discussions, but the atmosphere was marked by an undercurrent of uneasy anticipation. Samuel sat in his booth, surrounded by the children who had shielded him earlier. Their bravery was the talk of the diner, and Samuel was touched by their concern. However, the peace was abruptly shattered when one of the bikers, a burly man with a leather jacket, burst through the door. He had slipped away from the police car and was now back, his face twisted with anger and frustration. His eyes scanned the diner before landing on Samuel. You think you're some kind of hero, old man, the biker growled, his voice low and menacing. He spotted one of the children, a young boy named Timmy, and moved toward him. And what about you? Trying to be a hero too? Timmy's face paled, and he instinctively moved closer to Samuel. Samuel's eyes narrowed as he saw the biker advancing on the boy. His heart pounded, but he took a deep breath, his veteran instincts kicking in. Back off, Samuel said firmly, his voice steady despite the rising tension. The biker sneered, ignoring Samuel's warning. Or what? You're too old to do anything about it. As he reached for Timmy, Samuel's old reflexes, honed through years of military discipline, surged forth. He pushed himself out of the booth, moving with surprising agility for his age. His prosthetic leg, usually a symbol of his struggle, now became a tool of his resolve. "Don't you dare touch that child." Samuel's voice was a commanding roar, drawing the attention of everyone in the diner. The biker, momentarily taken aback, sneered again. "What are you gonna do? You're just a washed-up old vet." Before the biker could lay a hand on Timmy, Samuel lunged forward, intercepting him. He used his cane, which he had been using for support, to strike the biker's hand away from Timmy. The impact made the biker stumble back, a look of shock on his face. "You're not scaring anyone here," Samuel continued, his tone fierce. "You think you can come back and bully people? Not today." The diner fell silent as Samuel faced the biker, his stance unwavering. Timmy, along with the other children, looked on with wide eyes, their admiration for Samuel growing. The biker, realizing that Samuel was not going to back down, took a step back, his bravado faltering. "You think you're tough, huh? This isn't over." Before he could make another move, Officer Reynolds and a couple of his colleagues stormed back in, having been alerted by the noise. They quickly assessed the situation, moving to restrain the biker who was now trying to back out. "All right, that's enough," Officer Reynolds said, his voice authoritative. "You're under arrest for violating the peace and for assault. You're coming with us." The biker, now visibly frightened, offered no further resistance as the officers led him out of the diner. As they left, the other patrons let out a collective sigh of relief, their support for Samuel and the children evident. Samuel returned to his booth, his face flushed but resolute. The children gathered around him once more, their faces beaming with admiration. "You were amazing, Mr. Samuel," Emily said, her voice filled with awe. "I can't believe how brave you were." Samuel managed a tired smile. "Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even if you're the only one willing to do it. You all did the same, and that's what made the difference." Timmy, still holding on to Samuel's arm, looked up at him with admiration. "Thank you for protecting us." Samuel's eyes softened. "You don't need to thank me. Just remember that bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about standing up even when you're scared." As the diner began to settle back into its normal rhythm, the sense of triumph and relief was palpable. Samuel's defiance in the face of intimidation had not only defended the children, but also reaffirmed the community's strength and solidarity. The aftermath of the confrontation left the diner buzzing with a mixture of relief and excitement. The once tense atmosphere had transformed into one of camaraderie and gratitude. As the police took the biker away, patrons began to gather around Samuel and the children, eager to express their admiration and support. Lena, the waitress who had initially called the police, was among the first to approach Samuel. Her eyes were brimming with tears of relief and pride. "Mr. Samuel, I can't tell you how grateful I am," Lena said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You really saved the day. I'm so sorry you had to go through that." Samuel shook his head, a modest smile on his face. "No need for thanks, Lena. Just doing what needed to be done." At that moment, the door to the diner swung open, and Mayor Thompson strode in, his expression serious, but also showing a touch of relief. He was followed by several news reporters with cameras and microphones. "Samuel, I wanted to personally thank you," Mayor Thompson said, extending his hand. "Your courage today was exceptional. It's not every day we see such bravery." Samuel shook the mayor's hand firmly. "Thank you, Mayor. I just did what I thought was right." "Indeed," the mayor agreed. "We're making sure the bikers face the full extent of the law. And as a token of our appreciation, I'd like to offer you a commendation from the city." Before Samuel could respond, the reporters began to ask questions. One of them, a young journalist named Sarah, held up her microphone and addressed Samuel. "Mr. Samuel, can you tell us more about what motivated you to stand up to the bikers, especially considering the circumstances?" Samuel looked at Sarah, his gaze steady. "Sometimes, you just can't stand by and watch while others are being bullied. I've seen a lot in my time, and I've learned that standing up for others is the right thing to do, no matter the cost." The reporters, moved by Samuel's words, began to gather stories and quotes. The children, who had been hovering nearby, were now the center of attention, their bravery highlighted by the media. Emily, one of the young girls who had shielded Samuel, was approached by Sarah for an interview. Emily's cheeks were flushed with excitement. "Emily," Sarah asked, "what made you decide to protect Mr. Samuel like you did?" Emily smiled shyly but confidently. "He was nice to us, and he was in trouble. We didn't want him to get hurt, so we thought we should help him." The diner patrons, many of whom had been silent witnesses to the earlier events, now began to show their support in more tangible ways. Several of them came up to Samuel and the children, offering words of encouragement and small tokens of appreciation. "Thank you for standing up for Mr. Samuel," an older woman named Mrs. Jenkins said, handing Samuel a handmade quilt. "I made this quilt myself. I hope it brings you comfort." Samuel accepted the quilt with a grateful nod. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. This means a lot." The community's support didn't end there. Local businesses rallied to show their appreciation. The diner owner, Mr. Collins, announced that everyone's meals were on the house for the day, in honor of Samuel and the children's bravery. As Samuel and the children enjoyed their free meals, a sense of unity and pride filled the diner. Conversations were lively, and the once somber mood had shifted to one of celebration and togetherness. "We're so proud of you," Mr. Collins said to Samuel, placing a fresh slice of pie in front of him. "This town wouldn't be the same without people like you." Samuel looked around at the faces of those gathered, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and humility. "I didn't do this for recognition. I did it because it was the right thing to do. But I'm grateful for all your support." As the evening wore on, Samuel felt the weight of the day lift. The community's support had turned a difficult situation into a moment of profound solidarity. It was clear that the impact of his actions had resonated deeply, not only with the children he had protected but with everyone who had witnessed the events unfold. The diner, once a battleground, had become a place of healing and connection. Samuel knew that, although the day had been filled with challenges, it had also strengthened the bonds within the community and reaffirmed the power of standing up for what is right. The day after the incident, Samuel woke up early, feeling the exhaustion from the previous day's events. His usual morning routine felt comforting and familiar, but the events at the diner still weighed heavily on his mind. He had always prided himself on his resilience, but the confrontation had taken a toll on him both physically and emotionally. As he prepared his breakfast, his phone buzzed with a message from Lena, the waitress. She had reached out to check on him and offered to bring over some homemade soup. Samuel appreciated the gesture but was determined to manage on his own. His morning ritual included a quiet walk through the park to clear his mind. The park was serene, and the gentle rustling of leaves provided a soothing backdrop as Samuel strolled along the paths. He spotted a bench under a large oak tree and decided to sit for a while, reflecting on the events of the day before. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of one of the children who had stood up to the bikers, Emily. She was accompanied by her mother, Mrs. Johnson, who had heard about Samuel's bravery from the news and wanted to ensure he was doing well. "Mr. Samuel, I hope you don't mind us coming by," Mrs. Johnson said as they approached. "Emily insisted on bringing you this." She held out a small hand-decorated box. Samuel's face softened with a warm smile. "Of course not. I'm glad to see you both." Emily shyly handed him the box. "We made this for you. It's a thank you for protecting us." Samuel opened the box to find a collection of handwritten notes from each of the children, along with a small, hand-painted picture of a superhero standing guard. His eyes misted over as he read the heartfelt messages. "Thank you, Emily. This means a lot to me," Samuel said, his voice choked with emotion. "You all are very brave." Emily's mother, Mrs. Johnson, smiled at Samuel. "We just wanted to show our appreciation." Emily and her friends talk about what happened every day. "They're really proud of you." Samuel nodded, touched by the gesture. "It was an honor to help. I'm just glad everyone is safe." As they chatted, Samuel's old friend, George, arrived. George had heard about the incident and was concerned about Samuel's well-being. "Sammy, how are you holding up?" George asked, his face etched with concern as he took a seat beside Samuel on the bench. "I'm managing," Samuel replied. "Just taking it one day at a time. It's been quite a whirlwind." George looked at Samuel with admiration. "You did something really courageous yesterday. Not everyone would have stepped up like that. I'm proud of you." Samuel appreciated the sentiment, but shook his head. "I only did what I felt was right. It's the kids who showed real courage. I'm just grateful it ended well." Later that afternoon, Samuel received a visit from the local police chief, Officer Davis. The chief wanted to check on Samuel's recovery and offer his thanks in person. "Mr. Samuel," Officer Davis began, shaking Samuel's hand firmly, "I wanted to personally express my gratitude for your bravery. Your actions yesterday made a significant difference." "Thank you, officer," Samuel replied. "It's good to know that people are safe now." Officer Davis glanced around, noting the peaceful park and Samuel's reflective demeanor. "It's not just about what happened at the diner. It's about the impact you've had on the community. You've inspired a lot of people." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "I just hope everyone takes this as a reminder of the importance of standing up for each other." As evening approached, Samuel returned to his small, cozy home. He sat in his favorite armchair, reflecting on the support he had received from his community. The heartfelt notes from the children and the visit from George and Officer Davis had lifted his spirits. Samuel felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that his actions had resonated beyond the diner. The support from the community had been overwhelming, and it reminded him of the strength and kindness that existed in people. With a contented sigh, Samuel picked up a book he had been meaning to read. The pages offered a welcome distraction and a moment of peace. As he settled in, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and connection to the world around him. The events of the previous day had been challenging, but they had also brought out the best in those around him. Samuel's reflection on the day's events left him with a hopeful outlook, knowing that even in the face of adversity, there was always a chance for redemption and positive change. The days following the incident at the diner felt like a whirlwind of media attention and community gatherings. Samuel's story had spread far beyond the small town, capturing the hearts of many. The diner, once a quiet place for a simple meal, had become a symbol of bravery and resilience. As the weekend approached, the town decided to honor Samuel with a special ceremony at the park, where he often took his reflective walks. The event was organized by Lena, the waitress, and supported by various community members, including Emily and her mother, Mrs. Johnson. The park was decorated with banners and balloons, and a stage was set up for the occasion. Samuel, though initially reluctant to be the center of attention, agreed to attend, motivated by the support and encouragement he had received. He arrived at the park, greeted warmly by familiar faces. Emily and her friends ran up to him, presenting him with a large poster they had made, adorned with drawings and signatures. "This is for you, Mr. Samuel," Emily exclaimed, her eyes shining with pride. Samuel accepted the poster with a heartfelt smile. "Thank you, Emily. This is wonderful." As the ceremony began, the mayor took to the stage, his speech emphasizing Samuel's bravery and the collective spirit of the community. "Today, we celebrate not just the courage of one individual but the strength of our entire town. Samuel here showed us all what it means to stand up for what's right, and we are profoundly grateful." The mayor then invited Samuel to say a few words. Samuel approached the microphone, feeling a mix of humility and gratitude. "Thank you all for this incredible honor," Samuel began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I never imagined that my actions would lead to such a response. It was not just me who acted bravely, but the children who stood up and the community who came together. I hope this serves as a reminder that courage and kindness can make a difference." As Samuel spoke, his eyes wandered to the children who had protected him, standing proudly among the crowd. He noticed Emily and Mrs. Johnson, who smiled encouragingly. Lena, who had been working tirelessly behind the scenes, approached Samuel after his speech. "You did an amazing job out there. I think you've inspired a lot of people." Samuel shook his head modestly. "It's not about me. It's about everyone who stood up and supported each other. That's what truly matters." Later in the day, George visited Samuel at his home. He had brought a framed photograph of the ceremony as a gift, along with a handwritten note. "Sammy, I thought you might like this," George said, handing over the framed photo. "It's a reminder of how much you mean to this community." Samuel accepted the gift with a smile. "I appreciate it, George. It's been quite a journey, but seeing everyone come together has made it worthwhile." George nodded, his expression serious. "You've left a lasting impact, Sammy. Your bravery has shown us all the importance of standing up for each other. That's a legacy worth cherishing." As evening fell, Samuel reflected on the day's events. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his actions had sparked something positive in his community. The ceremony had been a celebration of not just his courage, but the collective spirit of the town. Samuel spent the rest of the evening in quiet contemplation, thinking about the future. He hoped that the legacy of courage and kindness he had inspired would continue to influence others, encouraging them to stand up for what was right and to support one another in times of need. As he turned off the lights and prepared for bed, Samuel glanced at the framed photo of the ceremony. It was more than just a memento. It was a testament to the power of bravery and community. He closed his eyes with a sense of peace, knowing that the legacy of courage he had helped foster would endure for years to come.